We Crest on Smooth 98.1. Headlines, Get quick access to loans from Page Financials. Page Financials, taking you further.
Students Live. Good morning, everyone. Special thanks to you and you and you for joining us on Smooth Breakfast today, Monday, the 26th of July, 2021. I am Valentine Ohu with Ayo Myra Esse. Good morning, Ayo. And good morning, Mr. C and Lakunle. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, the world. It's a great Monday, and it's good to be here.
All right, Mr. C, good morning. Thanks for
Good
joining
morning,
us.
Valentine. Good morning, Naya. Good morning, Mr. Lakwele. Good morning, Lagos.
Thank you so much. As per usual, please join the conversation by sending messages through WhatsApp number 0809 444 0981. That's 0809 444 We're streaming live on YouTube, so you can type Smooth FM Lagos in the search box to join. You can also leave a chat or use the chat option to send messages. I'm streaming live on my Instagram at Valentine Ohu, so please watch and join the conversation. We have 8 stories to go through between Mr. C and Lakunle. I'll start with you, Lakunle. On the voter apathy on Saturday, The Guardian reports that voter apathy mars Lagos and Ogun polls. In the lengthy read, there are detailed reports of different locations and how generally it seems like people are disenchanted with the government, especially the third tier of government, saying based on the precedents, they don't see any reason why they should vote to elect people that have already been handpicked. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, there are very many takeaway for me from this, but time and space will probably not allow us to go through all of them. But let me just quickly say congratulations to Lagos and Ogun states for having an election, even though the turnout was poor from both states as reported. It was There was no report of any violence or box snatching or whatever any from anywhere. So on that note, let's say congratulations to both states for that. Now, quickly, can we have a definitive calendar for elections in this country so that arbitrary dates don't happen on people? For example, I am sure that people have events and life-changing activities planned for that day, and somewhere in the middle of the year or a few weeks to that date, it was announced, look, we are going to shut down the state because we want to do elections on this day. Peradventure, if you have a fixed calendar of elections, people would leave out such election dates and not use those dates. Even so, when you shut down the state, it will not affect their plans. Secondly, okay, I've just talked about the shutting down. What is the cost of shutting down any economy because we want to have an election? As at 3:30 yesterday, because it happened to be around Obalende yesterday on Saturday evening, about 4 o'clock, I saw people who were just opening their stores, displaying their wares. This tells me that there are people out there. It confirms the general belief that there are people out there who, if they don't go to their spot of work or however you want to call it, would not feed in a day.
That's
So
true.
so it means that for more than half of the day, we have deprived this kind of people the opportunity to get a living for that day.
So are you saying we
So
shouldn't have
can
elections?
I'm saying, can we not have elections without shutting down the economy? What is so difficult about having elections without shutting down the economy? I don't know whether that is the only way, that's the solution to it. But I'm just thinking, okay, the people you want to come and vote are hungry. That's one of the excuses people give for not turning up for the
But it's
elections.
not a
They
tenable
say
excuse.
elections, I'm saying the
Yes.
excuses.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you are doing the things that further ingrains the excuse, that is obviously not a solution to the problem. Now, the last part I want to say is that the apathy is now a problem. We all want a change. We all clamor for changes. We all complain about what we get as a government from government. But if we don't participate in the last ladder of the chain, which is to vote, okay, we all say we don't want to do politics. We don't want to be partisan. We don't want to run for office. But the minimum we can do is to vote. So people should be able to get out there, participate, even if you don't know the candidates. Make a choice of the ones that the parties have put forward for you because you refuse to participate in the parties. Make a choice of the ones that the parties have thrown up. If you don't want those choices, step up one rung of the ladder. Participate in the selection processes of the parties so that the candidates you want can, if you don't want any of them, form your own party if that's possible for you, or join one and influence what is happening in there, and choose the candidates that all of you will go out there and vote. Not voting is not an excuse. Nothing is an excuse for not voting, because the local government, as we know, is perhaps the closest to the people and is the most functional of all arms of government for any improvements to be seen in our environment. Thank you.
You're quite right, Mr. Lakunle. Thank you so much for mentioning those things. In fact, something you said. First, let me address the ballot box issue. There was reports, or there was a report actually of ballot box snatching in Shogunle area of Oshodi. But besides that, to your point of voter apathy, there are so many reasons. First of all, not voting is as good as voting in the wrong candidate, because if you don't vote for the person that you feel like you trust can come into government, even if trust is a very valuable asset now that is very scarce in terms of government and people relations, that could be another reason why people don't vote, because you don't trust the government. You say, okay, if I exercise my civic rights to vote in somebody, what's to say that that person will be elected in the first place? And if that person goes in, what's to say that that person actually would live out the promises they made to me during their campaign? And to another point of voter sensitization, it's a concerted effort between, not just for the government, but for everybody. I mean, the allusions you're making in terms of why government should wait till this time or till the last minute to make announcements is what we're putting forward on Friday when we're discussing this with Waji and Cheta. And they were saying, I mean, Waji was like, these announcements have been made before. What do you expect? And all that. But you could tell that, I mean, people, though we know of the dates, but how many people are willing to come out? And what's to say that the government cannot convince people to say, you know what, as with the usual perception of the government, things can be better. Communication is key here. But Mr. C, what are your thoughts, please?
Okay, just to piggyback on what you said and also to add to what Lakunle said, the electoral system in Nigeria, I'm sorry to say this, is designed to frustrate some of the voters like me. Now, people have moved residences in between elections. It is only in Nigeria that a potential voter is tied to a specific location. The proper thing to do would be, once you are in possession of a valid voter's card, you can be found in the register of registered voters. You can vote anywhere within the land, but vote only once. Now, that will account for part of the reason why there was a very low turnout. My previous voting center was in VA. I have since moved, and it is a hassle. Anyone who has tried changing their location from the INEC website will testify to the unfruitfulness of that
I
process.
can attest to that because I've gotten a few reports, that correlate with what you just said.
So that's it.
Thank you. Let's move on very quickly to this next story, Mr. C. Bandits free 28 kidnapped Kaduna school students from Premium Times. At least 28 of these students of the Bethel Baptist Secondary School in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State have been freed by their abductors. As at the time of filing this report, there was no saying, or rather, report of the ransoms being paid. But what are your thoughts regarding the rescue efforts being made to get all the students back?
Okay, so very quickly, on the 8th of July 2021, 121 persons were abducted from the school. Now, on Saturday in the early hours, about 28 students were released. Now, that means we have at least 80 individuals still in captivity. Now, from the 8th of July to today's the 26th, that's 18 days. Yes, clearly some work has been done because some people have been released. What is the quantum of work? We cannot say, because we're not privy to what the security agencies are doing. We're not privy to what the parents and relatives of these abducted individuals are doing. And our thoughts go out to those who have been released and to those whose loved ones are still in captivity. Our thoughts go out to them. Now, there's a there's a bigger problem. The immediate problem is getting those still in captivity released. But what is the driving force behind these abductions? It's economic. The bandits, the criminals, the individuals involved in these abductions are doing it for economic motive, for prior and financial gain.
That's established.
And sadly, when we end up paying these ransoms, because in some in some instances, our security agencies simply lack the ability to extract them from captivity, we are then funding further operations because the question will be asked: when you pay the ransom, what do they use the monies for?
But there was no report of any ransom being paid, although we know
There's
that
no, no,
there
no.
was
There's
a
a
demand of
demand.
60
Yes,
million.
a demand was made
Yes.
for 60 million. We do not know whether it has been paid in full or in part. Now, the bigger question is, how do we stop abductions long term? You have to address education. You have to address the economy, and until we stop paying lip service to these issues, we will continue to report about abductions. Families will continue to be hurt, and it will be a continuing cycle that seemingly never ends.
Thanks for addressing the root cause, as we keep reiterating over and over again. Now, let's talk about other things relating to, we could probably say lack of jobs, or you could probably say misplaced priorities, or just anyhowness on the part of people that you would probably trust to hold certain positions. Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers is known as a body that brings together, road transport workers, drivers, and the likes. The chairman has been fingered. When we heard, if you see the headline, you probably think it's the chairman of overall chairman, but it's actually the chairman of the NARTW in Ijero local government area of Ekiti State, one Babatunde Babade, 45-year-old. He's been arrested along with others, two others, Ileshomi Shola, 35, and Babajide Johnson, for trafficking illicit drugs. There's a mention of the drugs, the kilograms, and all that. They were arrested. They were said to be arrested from when Sunday, the July 18th, 2021, and taken for interrogation. What are your thoughts on this, Lakme?
That there's a drug problem in this country right now is an understatement of a fact.
Yeah.
That the people that participate in it are possibly our big people is almost is a fact now.
How?
For example, this is a chairman of a government recognized
okay,
union.
so he's a big man.
Yes,
I
by
see.
any standard,
Yeah,
he is
yeah,
a
of
big
course.
man.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's a chairman of a government recognized union.
Yes.
Right. So
Directing
imagine
millions of naira, by the way.
imagine if I was chairman of NURTW of Victoria Island. I probably will have my residence somewhere on this Victoria Island too.
Yeah.
I'm saying
you probably be living in banana.
whatever. I'm saying, so you can imagine how big I
Yes.
should be.
Yeah.
So by any standard, he is a big man in Ekiti State. So if the big people, in quotes, are the ones who are caught in the, please, by the way, what is skunk? I need to get an education on most of those things. So
My
if,
research showed me that it's a strain of marijuana, locally produced marijuana.
okay, good, thank you. So if we have this kind of people in possession, in trafficking the drug, then it suggests that the market out there is huge and it's an all-comers affair. So it also means that where do they sell this? I want to know, is he the top of the chain, or is he an in between the top of the chain and the consumers, or is just doing this as a service to the actual owners of the drug? So those are the kind of investigations that should come out of this man's case. Now, since General Marwa had become the chairman of NDLEA, there's hardly a week that goes by that we don't hear of an arrest in the airports, on the roads, and all the other. So it tells me that something else something has changed in the NDLEA in the last 1 year or thereabout. So we must commend NDLEA for doing this job, right? The next thing also then to now say is that we all need to be aware of what our relatives, brothers, sisters, children, fathers, mothers do how do they, what do they do, what are their who they relate with, so that we should be bold enough to even report our relatives who participate in these things. But I'm sure that's a long shot, actually. But the truth is that if we don't do something about this thing, in another 10 years, we might have gone past where America is today in terms of problem of drugs. A friend tells me that most of the wards in most of the psychiatric centers in Nigeria today is full of people with drug problems, and that's just the ones who make it to the hospitals.
Yes, but a necessary question I would like us to address, really, or an issue that I need us to focus more on, is the looking away from the usual. Right? When I say looking away from the usual, you have statistics to talk about the drug proliferation in Nigeria. On the other side, there are talks of how the government could look into the economic factors that certain drugs that have been banned could be there could be a legalized way of bringing it into the economy to show up more income. But that's a conversation for another day. But the main point is these things have been happening for a long time. The drug running through this media, when I say media, I'm not talking about traditional media, I'm talking about through the transport systems, have been going on. It's just not obvious, right? And you mentioned the general that's coming to NDLEA is acting, and it seems like he's recording successes on a weekly basis. But it's because they're looking at the parts that are not too obvious. I mean, if you are going to transport drugs, it makes sense from the movies you see that the least or the person you suspect the least could probably be your prime suspect. I mean,
Absolutely.
would you stop an NELTW chairman on the road to question him and ask him to open his boots?
Exactly.
And if he shows you his ID card, we do it every day. You find people who have certain positions of authority, you can't flag them down in traffic.
Exactly.
They are the ones that you will not suspect of any foul play. But these are the people that sometimes, not pointing any fingers, could be the ones that are culpable.
Exactly, that's the problem, because now it's easy for the policeman or NDL or whoever to stop me and do a random check on me. But somebody you recognize as the big man, how would you stop? So when you see, the thing about it is that for every criminal act, once the law is onto you, you devise another means of circumventing the law. That's what I think this is. They see that their normal regular runners are being busted, so they go a step higher for people who ordinarily would not be stopped for this kind of stop and
Your
search.
usual suspects.
Exactly, the usual suspects. So like I said, we have a big problem with the drug thing at every level, and we need to deal with it.
Yes.
It's not just about law.
Yeah.
It's about continuous education, particularly our children, particularly who are easily impressionable.
Just to wrap up, we're running out of time, and hopefully this is addressed and seen to a conclusive end. Let's take a break. We'll be back to take more stories on Freshly Pressed 981. Special analyst, or guest analyst, Lakunle and Mr. C.
In a life with zero worries, imagine a world with all relaxed and free.
Hi, Aya. Hi, Aya. Hello, Aya.
Visit our website www.pagefinancials.com or call 0170072.
Serious back.
Page Financials.
Thank you so much for being there with us. You're listening to Freshly Pressed 981 on Smooth Breakfast, Smooth 98.1. 10 minutes before 8 o'clock. Mr. C, there's the next story talking about ASU. What I saw, there's a roll my eyes a bit though. For the Vanguard has this report that the Academic Staff Union of Universities has issued a warning of an impending indefinite strike if the federal government refuses to honor the agreement which led the body to suspend their industrial action last year. One would think that this is a thing of the past. Why are we still here?
So Valentine, yes, I disagree with you. I think it's high time ASU shuts down the educational system in Nigerian universities.
How's that going to take us forward?
No. When you have an irresponsible government that will voluntarily enter into agreements with ASU and fail to honor these agreements, its obligations, then something has to give. ASU is a body of lecturers, academic lecturers, who have children in the same system. Now, last year there was a strike. For a long time, students were home. There were negotiations, and in December, this administration voluntarily entered into a memorandum of understanding with ASU. There were 8 points to be agreed on, to be worked on, and the federal government undertook voluntarily to sort these issues out. What are these issues? The issue of the earned academic allowance. The government promised to look into it and fix it. Issue of funding for revitalization of public universities, salary shortfalls, proliferation of state universities and visitation panels, renegotiation and the replacement of the integrated payroll and personal information system IPIS,
IPS.
and university transparency and accountability solution UTAS, and then withheld salaries and non-remittance of check-off dues. Guess what? 7 months after that MOU was signed, the federal government has only been able to tackle the issue of salary shortfalls and the visitation panels. Nothing else has been done. There is no explanation, and it speaks to the trust deficit this administration has with the people.
What could be the challenges? Because I mean, it's easy to just say, oh, you guys are actually not being committed, but there could be some other challenges. And
So again, because I said that, remember I had said that the federal government hasn't explained why it couldn't do most of the 6 of the items. Off the top of our heads, we can easily deduce that funding is a problem.
Exactly.
Now, if funding is a problem, have you reached out to ASU to explain that, look, yes, in December we agreed to do 1 to 8. We've only been able to do 3 and 4. We have the intention, we still have the desire and the intention to fix the rest, but this is the funding problem. So we can only do 20% of these items now, and then this is the plan or the schedule for dealing with the rest.
clear communication milestones.
So, but this is a government that majors in the minors. The same energy they've used to perform illegal renditions, if they will just sit down and explain their obligations and their failure to meet their obligations to ASU, it will be very helpful. Because now, how are the universities supposed to function? They are improperly funded. The initial allocation is very poor when converted to US dollars, and even when they finally get it, it is insufficient. The quality of the average Nigerian graduate today is disappointing.
Thank you, Mr. C, for that apt analysis. Let's go through some messages here on Smooth Breakfast with Ayamara, SA, and Valentine Ohu. Rebecca from Ikeja says, this is the bane of our electoral system. Speaking of the low turnout of voters, it says the winner takes it all syndrome and now famous disinterest by most of us. It is not peculiar to the APC. And every state in Nigeria gives the ruling party 100% return on all contestants. And to think that this, for me, is the most important level of governance, yet people do not care. We're all fixated on Abuja and Buhari when we could actually start by taking over our LGAs. We're all guilty, and even the media is included. Thank you, Emeka, for lumping us in. Shegun says they will not vote but complain about elections. If your excuse is non-satisfaction with officials, then turn out en masse and vote for opposition parties. If you do not vote, your ballot paper will be idle and may still be used. Interesting. Ivy says the LG local government or the LG elections wasn't sufficiently publicized. The candidates weren't much known to the electorate, added to the obvious fact that they would have been pre-selected ahead. That part is close to the truth because I found that the candidates that I knew about, beyond just me personally researching, it included the candidates that went ahead to put up videos or spoke, about their plans. Especially there was one lady that I saw. I'm not going to mention her name for obvious reasons. But then Prince says, I don't agree with Lakunle on the fixed date and lockdown on election day. The date of election was announced in April. That's true. And I think that that's enough notification for anyone to plan for the life-changing event they might have.
Sure.
We're not mature enough to conduct elections without locking down because violence is a big deal to keep people safe. The security concern is there, and I was going to mention that. Taj says, on the ASU thingy, I think the panelists got it wrong. While we agree that the government has not owned up to its promises, government has been in talks with ASU on plans that were in place to raise the funds. But clear communication, clear milestones, that cannot be discounted. Emeka Onelum says, why? All right. Move on. Joseph from Lekki says the frustrations voters face are likely deliberate. The poor handling of relocation and I think location of voters, borders with lost cards, or even the need for those who need them during elections. Please make your messages clear. Gary Newton says, how possible is it that you have no candidate of choice? What choices do the voters have? Celeste says, the drug addiction problem is the supply demand reason. We need to find out the reason for the increase. Thank you, Celeste, for your contribution. Jane says, most Nigerian universities treat students poorly. They cannot get funds from alumni. They have refused to have internal revenue drives and partnerships. Major issues there. Major key. All right, let's go to this story from this day newspaper. Lakunle, court restrains federal government from accessing 200 billion naira unclaimed dividends. This federal high court sitting in Abeokuta granted that interim order restraining the federal government from taking charge or taking hold of these funds. But what are your thoughts on this story?
Just probably two things. One, it's a test of our laws. And I think that it's good that we are testing the laws and we are seeing that some of the things we ordinarily think that government can get away with, they won't get away with. Secondly, I'm glad that the court says they can't touch that money. You know, government has a way of using its laws and policies to bully people. They have done it with the pension funds, creating a policy and a law around it that they can access our pension contributions without our consent,
No,
so long as they can get.
It wasn't a bullying attempt.
I think
it was. Hold on.
I think it's a bullying. I think it is bullying because when you set a law,
can I just say,
okay,
that it was a request?
It is not a request. If you look at that rule, my understanding of that thing, it is bullying. You say they even went as much as setting what interest rates they would pay. I mean, you say you would take the money and then you would pay 5%. We are not asking the owners of the money or the persons in charge of the money to say this. It should be a negotiation. But they set a policy and put everything in there. So it's the same thing they have attempted to do with this one. And I'm glad personally that the court has said they can't touch it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That thank you at the end sounded like mic drop. But Mr. C, what are your thoughts on this story? Let's talk. Let's talk about this other story. People working behind the scenes on Igbo's arrest. That's coming from the Lagos State Governor, Sanwo-Olu. He addressed this yesterday, disclosed that contrary to the impression that the Southwest governors were silent on the arrest and detention of the Yoruba Nation's activist, Chief Sunday Adeyemo, aka Sunday Igboho, by the federal government or by the authorities of the Republic of Benin, that people were working silently on the travels of the self-determination agitator. What are your thoughts on this claim?
I think he's being mischievous by half, and I will explain why. The position of the federal government concerning Chief Sunday Adeyemo, popularly known as Sunday Igboho, is clear. They want him to be returned to Nigeria to answer for his perceived crimes. So what is the governor of Lagos State talking about? These things these people he claims are working quietly behind the scenes. Are they working at cross purposes with what the federal government wants? And how are they going to achieve these unidentified aspirations when the federal government is clearly pursuing a singular objective?
But there are parties that are concerned and are weighing their supports, like the Olubadan sent a delegation to Benin Republic to actually try.
So that's moral support, Valentine. The government of the day has made no pretense about what it wants. He must be extradited to Nigeria to stand trial for his perceived crimes. So I'm not sure what they're going to achieve, but he's in court today. He returns to the Beninoa court today, and unless the federal government of Nigeria can present evidence before that court to show that he has violated his committed crimes in Nigeria, they may not win in their attempt. They may not succeed in their attempt to have him extradited.
Thank you, Mr. C. Thank you, Lakunle. Let's take a look at a few messages for a wrap-up. Kenneth says, government cannot tell ASU that they lack funding, but spend lavishly on government officials. National Assembly getting all allowances despite some sleeping during sittings. Government, please fund our schools, no excuses. And Prince says, as at today, only government securities like bonds guarantee stability and highest return or rate of return. The pension investment regulations allow the PFAs to invest up to 80% of pension fund in government securities. And the only way government would default is if the sovereignty is threatened or collapsed. In any case, about 70% of the pension fund has already been invested in various government bonds. When people say government should not borrow from the pension fund, it's like say PFAs should not invest in government funds, which
They're
I
not
see
the
as
same
ignorant talk.
things.
But government did not hoodwink pensions. Shanu, thanks for your message, and special thanks to you, Lakunle and Mr. C, for stepping in this morning to do justice to the stories. Please, if you missed any part of the conversation, refer to YouTube and type Smooth FM Lagos in the search box and find us. In 9 minutes, I'll be having an interesting conversation for a Lagos Talk special. We will be chatting with Inebe, a lawyer and human rights activist, on the voter apathy experienced on Saturday. Let's talk.
Quick access to loans from Page
Thank you.
Financials.
I don't